presents
Sure.
Hi, this is Duke Dillard, and I'm with Andrew Finkel, journalist and author of most recently Turkey, What Everyone Needs to Know. And we are here with Captivating Cappadocia today, and we're going to talk about the book and about Andrew's life and what he's working on. So welcome, Andrew. We thank you for the time.
Well, thank you for summoning me to this interview. That's kind of you.
Yeah. Can you just start? Why don't you introduce yourself? Not everybody that's watching this will have known you, so just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a journalist. I've been based in Istanbul for longer than I care to mention, but I first came to Turkey in the 1960s as a boy. I lived here for a year as a kid in a city of 1 or 2 million people. Now I live in Istanbul, a city of 12 or 14 million people. So I've been able to observe changes in Turkey over a very long period of time.
Yeah. Now, how much did that coming when you were a child, when you were younger, how much did that affect you coming later?
Well, I suppose, Turkey was, in those days, was my secret garden. I was a crypto-orientalist, perhaps. I sort of liked Turkey for all the wrong reasons. And by that time, then somehow I got stuck here. It was now, once I began to understand it better, I suppose I'm not saying I'm ashamed of my former attitudes as a young man, but I certainly changed them. But by that time, I guess it was too late. I had made my life here, so here I am.
Yeah. Well, you didn't mention it, but let me mention your wife is also a historian, Ottoman specialist. As I understand it, I actually haven't read her book, but it's sitting next to my desk, next to my bed is the next one. How has your relationship with her helped or affected your ability to cover Turkey and really at a deeper level, I would think?
Well, I met Caroline when we were both doing PhDs back in the early 1980s in Istanbul. In fact, we were married here. That wasn't yesterday, and I guess the fact that we both made our lives and our careers to do with Turkey. Obviously, that reinforced one another. I suppose if she'd been interested in Hadrian's Wall in the north of England, or a Chinese historian, it might have been more difficult. But Turkey's been a place where we can both live and work and exercise our interests. So I guess that's been mutually reinforcing. And I know you said you haven't read Osman's Dream. It is an excellent book.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to read it. Let me ask you this: there are, as I had mentioned when I wrote you, that I've talked to Chris Morris, I've talked to Hugh Pope, I've talked to Kinzer, I've read Mango's book. What do you feel like your book, besides the fact that it's newer, what do you feel like that it adds to the conversation? That the need, besides just new material, that your book adds to this?
Well, I had a slightly different brief than those people that you mentioned. It's part of a series. The title may sound a bit silly, What Everyone Needs to Know, but that's the title of the series. Mm-hmm. And the series is what it says on the label. It tries to sort of talk, the average educated person through a difficult topic,
right.
and to hold them by the hand and lead them through a path that they might otherwise get lost. And of course, the history and the sociology and the politics of modern Turkey is not an easy subject. Those books all have their merits. I guess there are obvious similarities. I mean, what I suppose is different from my book is that partly it has the questions I ask myself questions. It's a sort of it's a Socratic dialogue with myself. I ask questions and then I answer them, and of course the questions that I ask myself reflect their interests. For example, there's quite a lot about the preservation of the past and attitudes towards the past, and those subjects don't come into those other books you mentioned quite so much. The other thing, I suppose, which is interesting and I don't know, I wouldn't say unique, but stands out in my book is is where I try to say how Turkey is different from other European countries, how
Hmm.
it's how it's the cycles in which Turkish politics have operated have been somewhat different from European cycles, and I try and analyze that Turkey emerged from the Cold War in a sense later than other
Yeah.
than Central or Eastern European countries. So that the Cold War in Turkey was sort of didn't really end until 2002, 2003 for reasons that I explain.
Yeah.
Which is a very different experience from Central and Eastern Europe.
Hmm. Yes.
Uh, uh, I have I have different problematics and different things in my mind when I answer these questions, and I suppose my own interests stand out.
Yeah. No, I agree. I just trying to let others know. I really appreciate it. That one thing about Turkey is that things are changing so fast. There's so much happening that I mean, 3, 4, 5 years, and you really need another book. And so I really appreciated. I did not, as I said in my review, that it didn't feel like a lot of repetition from other books. It really was. You covered different things. You covered new ground. I mean, you dealt with stuff that you have to deal with in the background, the foundation. But I really appreciated the things you added, and clearly you've had so many years that you have a perspective, and it was I really. It's different from somebody that comes in. They're here for 3 years. They do their stuff, and they leave, and they write a book. You really have that deeper, longer perspective, which was came out in the book. I thought.
Well, it's one of the first lines in the book is that anyone sitting down to write a book about Turkey knows they're about to commit perjury. That anything you write today is going to be untrue tomorrow. So it's writing a book that stands the test of time is very difficult for Turkey because, as you said, it changes so quickly. But I try and give a set of rules, I guess. I mean, perhaps the sort of grammar
Hmm.
of Turkish politics and Turkish
Right.
society. So they, even though the society will change, and what you say about the European Union or about Cyprus or about this or about that will be
Uh-huh.
different tomorrow. At least you have the tools to understand those changes, and
Right.
that's what I try and give.
Yeah, and I think you did a good job. Let me ask you just one more about that. The process of writing it, the process of picking what you're going to include, what you're not, how long to make it, because you could have written thousands of pages if you wanted to, I'm sure. So, was that a difficult process? Did you get help from editor? Did you have an idea and you knew what you wanted to do, and because of the series, the kind of book it was, that was easier, or how did that process work?
Well, I gave them a game plan and they approved it, but the book was, I mean, I was really quite surprised at how very little editing they did, or at least,
Hmm.
apart from basic copy editing. So the book pretty much stood as I gave it to them. Obviously, there were a few changes, but nothing really substantial. And the only thing is that it took me much longer to write than I thought it would do. I thought this was, it's not a huge book. I thought I could write it, I write for a living, so I thought, well, this is something I can get out quite quickly. But managing to sort of synthesize quite difficult subjects
Yeah.
into essays of 800 or 1,000 words was really quite tricky. I discovered. I had sort of two audiences in mind. One
Hmm.
was, as I said, the educated non-specialist, the person who didn't know anything about Turkey. But the other audience was my friends, and people who do know about Turkey. And the idea
Yes.
was to be able to write an essay that would both instruct people who don't know anything about Turkey, but also not embarrass myself in front of people who do know about Turkey, and also to amuse them. I mean, there's no point writing a book if it's difficult to read or drudgery to read. So, the idea was to write in such a way as that would entertain my friends. I think that was what I set down to do, but it was a more difficult task than I'd anticipated.
Did you have to do a lot of research still, or were you pretty much going from things this is what you're doing all the time, so you knew the answer, sort of, it's just a matter of putting it all together?
Well, at a certain stage, I thought, well, what I'm doing is giving people the tip of the iceberg of what I know, so that the process that I probably wouldn't have to do that much research. But of course, when you actually come down to it, it turns out there's a lot of things you think you know that you don't know, or that you have to check and be sure of. So, um, I wouldn't say that this is a book based on deep research, and but obviously, in order to cover subjects, accurately and comprehensively, obviously I had to do more work than possibly I thought I would have to do.
Mm-hmm. Let's sort of switch gears a little bit. Looking at Turkey as it is, thinking in a sort of a prophetic sense, what do you see as sort of the biggest challenges that are going to, the outcomes of which will determine just how far Turkey goes, the direction Turkey goes in the next 10, 15, 20 years?
The challenges which Turkey certainly faces are restructuring the economy so that it's not simply dependent on growth and consumer demand. Turkey has to create a space for itself in the world to do something better than everybody else, and it needs to think about what it is, where that specialization is. Turkey has to provide a sort of future for its young people. It's one thing to say that everyone should have lots of children that this is a youthful, vibrant country. It is, but if you're youthful, it also means that there's a lot of youthful expectation, and you have to provide, future and hope and whatever for your young population. And of course, there's a serious political challenge, which is, Turkey throughout its post-war history, perhaps through the history of the Republic, perhaps even earlier, has been dependent on different modes of administration. It's there's been a heavy-handed, prohibitive, in which authority has been necessary to maintain order and prosperity, and that and then there's the notion that this no longer fits a modern society, that a modern society should be a free society, and people should be free to do what they want, think what they want, behave as they want, read what they want, and dress as they want. And trying to balance these two modes, they're having a carrot and the stick, as it were. It has been historically very difficult for Turkey, and it's a challenge that it still faces. It's the challenge that it faces in trying to rewrite a constitution. It's a challenge that we see in everyday political rhetoric. It's a challenge that it faces in the Kurdish issue. That's a sort of generalization which affects many specific pockets of Turkish life.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So Andrew, thank you so much for the time. I do appreciate it, and we wish you all the best in your continued endeavors and keeping us informed about Turkey. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for interviewing me. Thank you. Bye.